All right, Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Sonia Lahana, is it? I think Ms. Sonia Lahans, for organizing this webinar. I would like to also thank the Universiti UniMAP Malaysia, especially the CGS, for allowing Ms. Sonia Lohan and others to organize this webinar. For participants, basically we're having participants from 3 universities: Universiti UniMAP Malaysia, Universiti Teknologi PETRONAS, and Universiti Malaysia Perlis. I would like to welcome you all to this session. I hope that the session is going to be beneficial and useful for you. This is my 6th session on systematic literature review in last 2 months. I have conducted 5 sessions on the same topic in different places and different countries, but it still looks like the students are very eager and interested to know about it. So let me inform you that I do have my YouTube channel. You can see on the screen, Platform for Research and Development. I have posted videos on research methodology only. This YouTube channel is only for research methodology. So if you want to see some videos, some of my talks that I've delivered is already there in my YouTube channel. Later towards the end, I will show you how can we go to YouTube channel, and I'll show you 1 or 2 videos to review. Let me slowly start as expecting more participants in this session. For literature review, I start with this slide always. We say that the secret of success is to know something nobody else knows. The reason we do research is because we'd like to solve a problem. This is the central theme of any research that we undertake. We always have to remember that there must be some kind of problem that requires or warrants researchers to undertake research. If there's no problem identified and defined, then there should not be any research. We should not be wasting our time, energy, and effort if there's no problem and we do not want to find solution. So at the end of our research, we have to prove that we have come out with something new. So it could be something knowledge, new knowledge contribution. It could be in the form of methodological contribution. It could be some kind of form of contextual, practical, or managerial contribution. Some kind of new thing must be there in the research. If you want to get through your PhD final viva voce, as so we have gone through, we all have sweat, you know, to answer the question, what is new? So if you fail to show some kind of new things in your research, then you will struggle. And even if you want to publish your research paper in a very good journal, it is definitely warranted to show something new. The research has to be original. When you say original, the originality, definitely you have to show that you have taken some initiative to do something new. At the end, you show some new outcomes. So let me start slowly with basic topic of research. These are some compilation of definition of research from different sources. Research, we say, is a voyage of discovery, it's a journey, it's an attitude, it's an experience, a method of critical thinking and all this. I take it this way, you know, when you are driving from, say, for example, from Kuala Lumpur to Penang, that is a journey. So on the journey, you see many things, and you have many trouble, and sometimes you drive faster, sometimes you drive slow. That's how it is, you know. On the way, you see some accidents, and that makes you scared. That's how I compare the research is. Research is basically a journey. So sometimes it will be faster, sometimes you get stuck, and you know, sometimes it will be slow, and sometimes you do not know how to go and where to go, and that kind of situation will be always there. So that is basically research. On the journey to complete PhD, we know how much we struggle. You know, at many times we thought of stopping and dropping out from the program. This is very natural, very normal. And sometimes we do change topic, like when we are driving and we see the traffic jam there, what we do, we try to find alternative roads to follow on, to move on. So that is also in PhD, when we start with the topic and we get blocked, so we try to look for alternative topics to proceed with. So that's why I'm saying research is basically a journey and definitely an attitude and an experience for all of us. It is a scientific investigation. I don't think I want to talk about it since most of you are adult and master's PhD students. The red marks I always emphasize. The research is basically implicit question and explicit answer plus data to answer the question. So you have implicit question with explicit answers, and then we'll collect answers to data to answer our questions. Okay, so it's not synonymous with common sense, but it is a systematic, objective, reproducible, relevant activity having control over some factors. That's what is research. The other definition I'm not going to do. This is very organized definition. It's a bookish definition, but very organized one. Research is an organized, objective, systematic process to study a particular problem that needs solution. So we have to remember a few things here. Whenever I do research, there must be a problem that requires solution. For example, now, the whole world, we have a problem of pandemic, COVID-19, that requires a solution, and hundreds of people, scientists all over the world are now working day and night to come out with the vaccination. So we have a problem, and they are doing a research to come out with some kind of solution so that it helps the whole world population to solve the kind of problem that we have, the health issues. But while you are looking for solution, definitely you are doing some kind of activities which are very organized with a clear objective and with a systematic process, right? If you are looking for a vaccination for COVID-19, so the activities that you are undertaking now got to be, it has clear objective, and then it has to have a systematic process of collecting the data, analyzing them, reviewing them, and coming out with some kind of conclusion to come out with a good solution to solve it. What is research again? Research is searching again, looking at the term research, searching again. So we know the topic that we undertake. Hundreds of people have done research on that area in many countries, in many attempts, right? But again, we do research on the same topic because of many reasons which we will discuss later. There's no research first time you do, never done before. I don't see, I don't see. Definitely, we do research in an area where it is done before so that we can have some past literature and some theories are there to help us to guide conducting the research. We look for new ideas, we search for answers to an old question, we look for the existing answers to question and search for new answers. Why you do research? Because that's what I'm saying, because social realities evolve and change. The things we see now after 2 years or 5 years, you won't see those things happening, In 1999, when the first time mobile phone came in, things were different, and now it's totally different. When the first time handphone came in, there were charges for incoming call and outgoing call, and then the handphone size was bigger, the service was slower. As time goes by, it becomes faster. The handphone size even becomes smaller. More functions are there. So we see a lot of apps are coming in, so things are changing. And these are changing our lives, the way we do things, the way we make decisions in the corporate level and all that. So definitely it requires for us to do new research. The ideas also evolve and change. The time, if you look back at 20 years before, the kind of food you used to eat and now the kind of food you eat is totally different. If you look at the kind of dress we wear in 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, and now it's totally different. So things are changing. This is a simple example to look at. So the way we work in the organization now is getting more paperless, more automated and all that. So things are changing. And that requires us to do research, even though many research have done before on the same area, okay? And then the solution that we have are contestable. For example, like COVID-19 is not the first kind of coronavirus we have now. This is the third coronavirus. We had it before too, and we had a vaccination for those two. But now with the new one, because this one is taking a lot of mutations, and coming out with the vaccine become very challenging, and that's where everybody is struggling. So even though we had solution for coronavirus, but there's a new one, and the other solution that we have doesn't work. So we have to look for new one, and that's why we have to do research. Now, let me, from the beginning, clarify some of the misunderstanding that we have among the students. This is not about PhD thesis, but it's about when we publish a paper. Many of us, we think that collecting information and facts and just describe them is research, but that is not a research. Just collecting facts, information with no clear purpose is not a research. When you will call it a research when you have a very clear objective. At the beginning, we defined that research is something objective, systematic, right? Or those terms we put in, because we have a research problem, and we have to have clear objective to solve those research problems. Reassembling and reordering facts and information without interpretation. That's what we do in many of us. We collect data, then we do analysis, and we just describe them based on regression, multiple regression, or hierarchical regression, or ANOVA, t-test, or whatever statistical methods we use. Based on the findings, we just present the findings that we have without interpretation. And this is the part where majority of students are very weak, because when you interpret the findings, it has to somehow, you have to correspond with the previous research, and you have to connect it to the theories, and you should have your new inference to the findings that you have. So just reassembling and reordering facts and information without interpretation is not considered a research. Number three, when an esoteric activity with no or little relevance to everybody's life, when you do research that benefits only very few, that is not a research also. Say, for example, you are conducting a research that benefits on a small section of people, say 100 or 200 people, that is not considered a research. Research is done with the purpose of benefiting a lot of people, a good section of society. That's important. Data may come from a small number of population, but it has to have usefulness, relevance to many people. And number four, also, sometimes we do advertisement and promotion and all that because you want our product to be noticed. That is also not research. You do some kind of review of literature, and you come out with some kind of, your own product review, and all those are also not research. Now, these are the components of an empirical research. So we start with research problem, and then we will translate research problem into few research questions and objectives. That's how we start. But again, to define research problem, actually, you would need to review past literature. You have to understand theories and assumptions. You have to find out the variables, all that, to understand the real problem that we have. And that's why, as we supervise PhD students, for me, I will always ask the students to write chapter 2 first, not chapter 1. You'll be reading papers, you will be understanding the topic, you will get some kind of gaps on the topic, and then you will write your literature review chapter first. And for me, again, I will ask my student to write chapter 3 after chapter 2. So chapter 2 first, then chapter 3, then after that, I will ask the student to come back to chapter 1 and write chapter 1 now. So if you are doing chapter 2 first, so you have reviewed all the relevant theories, you have reviewed past researches and all that, you've got good understanding on the topic, and you identify the variables and all that, then you move to chapter 3, you develop your theoretical framework or conceptual framework, you construct your hypothesis, you talk about research methodology, all that you have got it from previous research. Then now when you come back to chapter 1, writing chapter 1 become fun because you have everything there from chapter 2 and 3. So writing chapter 1 is just fun. So that's how I do it. Okay, so today's session is basically on number 2. I put it on the red marks. Okay, so now you have a research problem in mind, and from that you have some kind of research question, but now you got to identify, refine your ideas, define the research problem and all that, and for that reason we'd like to do some kind of literature review. So when you talk about literature review, there are many ways of looking at it. Sometimes we just call it literature review, sometimes we call it systematic literature review, sometimes we call it critical literature review. So there are many terms are there. I'm going to cover all those in today's talk, inshallah. So this is what we have. You have your title, and then we have purpose statement, research question, objective, hypothesis, which is very common. Now, this is something I got from social media. This is supervisor and examiner's expectation from a PhD research. Your supervisors or examiners want, you got one tree, but he want many different fruits because they want new knowledge contribution. So in one research, they want to see you have new knowledge contribution, you have methodological contribution, you have practical managerial contribution. They want to see so many things. So they want, you know, you have a plant of apple, so apple tree, and they want oranges and bananas and all that in one tree. That's basically how we look like, you know, because we want so many things from you. Okay, so later I will describe and discuss more on this. Actually, how can you convince the supervisor and examiners on the outcome of research that we have and convince them. This is something I just thought about, and I have developed it. Just recently, I have developed it. So the tree analogy. So you have a tree now. Let me explain now. I'm going to compare a research with a tree now. Okay. So I assume that the research problem should come from the ground. So a tree will not survive if there is a problem in the ground, in the soil. You need to have right fertilizer. You need to have proper watering. You know, the tree should be able to get things that it's supposed to get from the soil to survive. So that's where if you have a problem there, the whole tree will be having trouble. You know, the first thing you will notice in a tree when something is wrong would be the leaves. The leaves, the green leaves may turn to be yellow or white, you know, or other color. So that leaves actually beautify the tree. So the tree, I compare it, the leaves, I compare it with literature review. Literature review basically beautifies your research work. Okay, research problem come from the root, and then if everything is right at the root, the tree gets stronger, and then it gives you the right outcome. So let me explain one by one. So I'm saying the research problem comes from the root. So in your research, you identify the problem there. If you fail to identify what is causing the problem of a tree to die, you know, then definitely you fail to identify the right kind of research problem. So basically the problem that we have at the root of the tree, the research problem, this is the same as the research that you undertake. It doesn't matter whether it's a master research or PhD research or a research that you're undertaking because of you having a grant. Okay, so research problem is there. You got to be very careful, and you got to be very clear. You got to be straight, you know, and right, identifying the research problem. As I say, the leaves that you see, that is basically, it is a beautification of that. It beautifies the tree. When you look at the tree, it looks beautiful because the leaves are, you know, healthy, the colorful and all that. So that beautifies your tree. So when you do literature review in a research, that basically beautifies your thesis, because you are talking about who has done what in previous years, which country, and all that. That beautifies, you know, that beautifies your research draft that you write. If your literature review is written rightly, so that's how it looks like. A tree looks beautiful, so a thesis will look more beautiful. I put theoretical framework as the backbone of the tree. So if it is stronger, your framework is stronger, the thesis is stronger. You see the tree body, if it's not strong, when there's a storm or heavy wind, the tree will fall. Even though your root is strong, but your body is not strong, the tree will fall. So in your research, the framework that you design, it could be theoretical framework, it could be conceptual framework, it could be a research model, or you may have science students some equations, you know, to derive and finally arrive at a solution. These all are basically the body of your research. I put it as theoretical framework. And the branches of the tree, I put it as underpinning theories. Every research, you have some theories that underpin your research. There must be, unless you have a conceptual framework, then you have concepts, okay? With theoretical framework, you have theories. If you have conceptual framework, you have concepts. Those are the branches of the tree. So those branches are very important. You cannot have a tree just having the body and go straight up, right? It will not survive very long. So you have to have branches of tree to make it stronger even. So you need theories. That also somehow beautifies your thesis, the tree, right? As well as your thesis. Now, when come to the fifth one is the data quality and robustness of analysis. When you collect the data, if your data quality is very good, your analysis is very robust. So what will happen? If tree is having a problem and you identify what is the problem and how do you solve it, so it's like you are putting fertilizer and the correct amount of appropriate amount of water, you know, it's like fertilizing and watering the tree. So that is basically your data analysis and robustness of analysis. So you have identified your problem, now you are analyzing it, you know, and then you are putting some kind of fertilizer into it. Robustness of analysis, you're putting fertilizer in. So we have different kind of fertilizer in a tree, right? You put potassium, urea, you know, and many phosphorus and many other kind of fertilizer that we put under the tree at different time for different occasion. That's how we treat the research. We use different statistical method and we treat them differently, you know, to find out the real solution of a problem. And finally, the top of the tree, the one you see, I have put the marks on it, the fruit. The fruits that you see is basically your research outcomes or your contribution. Now, if the plant you have give the same fruits that others give, then you got no contribution. So how can you contribute? That's why earlier slide I showed you, right? Supervisors want like this. They want banana and oranges and apple and kiwi all in one tree. But that one may not be possible. But what can you do? Maybe the size of the fruit could be bigger. Maybe the taste of the fruits could be better. You know, maybe the color of the food will be different. Maybe the taste of the food got to be different. So that is your research contribution, the outcomes. So the fruits may look similar, but yet the taste is different. The fruit may look very similar, but the smell is different. Or may the fruit become bigger. Or possibly the quantity of fruits are more in a tree than the other tree. So that is your contribution. That's how you have to look at. Okay. So this is a recent analogy that I have developed. I thought that would be good for you to understand really how research actually works with a tree analogy. Again, I leave it now, this slide. Later, during the question and answer, if you have any addition and any feedback on it, we will debate on it. Okay. Let me proceed. So what is literature review? The term literature means basically works we consult in order to understand and investigate our research problem. So we have to understand it now. Literature means we are consulting the works of others. So that's what is literature review. So you are reviewing what people have done before. So that is literature, right? Consulting the work undertaken by people. Now, what is systematic literature review then? So systematic literature review is basically a clearly formulated question that uses systematic and explicit method to identify, select, and critically appraise relevant research and then collect, analyze data. Okay, that is useful for us. So what is very important here is when you conduct literature review, you have clearly formulated questions in mind. Okay, and that question drives us to use a systematic and explicit method to identify, select, and then critically appraise relevant research. Okay, so the aim of a systematic literature review is to provide a complete and exhaustive summary of current literature review, current relevant literatures. Okay, and definitely relevant to the research questions we have. So that's the question many students will ask me. So how do I write literature review? Should I follow the variable or should I follow the research questions? Okay. So that one I'll leave it for now. Later we'll talk about it. So in a systematic literature review, basically there are two steps. In first step, we conduct a systematic review to create structured questions. So first of all, we develop certain kind of questions that will guide us to do a review, and then based on that, in second stage, we'll perform a thorough search of literature and then we review them. Now, this is what it is for a PhD student. The hardest part is getting started. Where do you start? I'm very sure those of you with me, every one of you have struggled, or those are new are struggling with it. Where to start? Okay, where to start? Now, the first, definitely you will face the challenges in finding out or identifying the sources of quality information with highest value that brings the highest benefit and outcomes. So finding out quality information is a question. As I review the question that you put in during when you fill in the Google form, many of you have asked question whether I should get papers from Scopus or ISI or 2 is enough. So for me, as long as a paper is published in any index journal, should be all right. There are many good journals in the world are there. They don't care, you know, to get indexed with the Scopus and ISI. There are many, but now everyone is trying to get indexed with that. But still, there are many good journals available there, which are not really indexed with the Scopus and ISI. So as long as a journal is indexed with any kind of indexing, should be all right. Okay. So what is important is good paper, a good research done based on that published paper would be the one that we look for. So identifying good quality sources of good quality information, so that comes from indexing journal and all that, which is important. Beside that, there are many other ways also to identify quality information. It starts with intuition, experience, research, and authority. These four will help us to identify research gaps. Okay, intuition is basically your ability to know something directly without any analytic reasoning, bridging the gap between conscious and subconscious parts of your mind. So intuition basically it is embedded in us. You know, the way we have been brought up in the family, in the university, the way we mix up with our friends and all that. We do develop some kind of intuition in us, which also provides some kind of information to us. And then the experience of going through the phenomenon that we are feeling now, you know, facing now. So it is a personal contact with the specific phenomena. Most of us, when we select a research topic, we select it could be from a few perspectives. First of all, I feel that is I'm interested to do research on it. And number two, I feel like I want to proceed my career into this area, so I want to do a research on it. Number three, it could be that I have some kind of experience, I have worked in the same area, so I'm choosing a topic on it. So some kind of experience that we have, and we do also consult with people who have some kind of experience on the same area. For example, somebody who has done a research on the area. For example, when we choose a supervisor also, we look for somebody who has done a research in the same area, so we choose him as supervisor, right? So someone who has experience doing research on the area, somebody who has gone through similar problem that we are going through might provide us also useful information. And also, we may do some systematic review of materials available. And from there also, we see whether it helps us to define and refine the research problem that we have identified. And in research also, we do consult with people who have authority. We will always advise students to consult with academic experts as well as industry experts. Most of the time what we do, we confine ourselves into academic expert only, which is not right. Because at the end of the day, the solution that we are going to provide is not going to help academia more, is academia more, is more on industry, okay, people who are working there. So it is always good to consult with academia as well as industry. In fact, to me, consultation with industry is much more useful and more relevant than academia. Academia will only guide you on theories and knowledge, but in terms of practical experiences that are being faced in the industry, which are very important for you to take into account in your research. And also, in the industry, there are a lot of complaints about PhD. Many industry people will call it, a PhD is something bookish kind of thing, very academic, it doesn't really help them. So there are a lot of complaints are there also. So now, when we supervise a student, we always tell them, do research something relevant to the industry so that it has application in the industry. So academia and industry both gets benefited. So we have four kind of authentic source of information that I mentioned here, right? So it's your intuition, your experience, you do prior research, and then you have consult with people who has authority. Now, why do we do literature review? Number one, we do some kind of preliminary research of existing material. We organize valuable ideas and findings based on what people have done. We identify other research which is in progress. We generate research ideas and we develop some kind of critical perspective. I always give the same example, you know, for easy understanding. If you're not feeling well and you go and see a doctor, what the doctor will do first, he will ask you a few questions. Actually, he is reviewing the history, right? He's asking you, when did it start? Did you had it before? Is there any other family member having it? You know, that sort of questions are there. What other complication you have? So basically, he's reviewing the history and the problem that you have, the health issues. So that's the same thing we are doing. Basically, we are reviewing literature because we are reviewing just, you know, the existing material that we have. We are developing, organizing ideas, generating ideas, then we develop some kind of critical perspective. And also some other thing that we get some ideas and we identify gaps, which is very important. The gaps that we identify become the precious you know, part of our research. That gives us the clue that something is not done. So gaps will tell you what is done and what is not done, and that's where we identify and we pinpoint and focus and we conduct or undertake a research on it. So when you do literature review, the part of actually the most important part of literature review is to help us identify the research gap. We get an overview of the research, you know, in the area of research. We get some kind of feeling of what is doable and what is worthwhile. I remember, you know, when I started doing my own PhD, after 6 months, I had to change my title because I thought PhD we do once in a lifetime. I want to do something to change the world. And after 6 months, I had to change the title. So that is very important. I do also remember, you know, maybe many of you are new. It is something worthwhile to know and understand it. My supervisor, when I met her first time, she advised me to obtain a full thesis on my area. She advised me to get that, and she told me basically if I can get it, it's not that I'm going to follow that thesis. It's not that I'm going to copy from there. It is basically understanding how a PhD thesis looks like. It is basically gives me idea what is doable in a PhD and what is something very important to do in a PhD, you know. But I was so egoistic at that time. I thought, you know, I'm going to do PhD once in lifetime and I want to change the whole world by doing my PhD. So I choose a topic which is not doable. So after 6 months of wasting time, I had to change my title, you know. And what is more shocking, you know, even after that, the second title I chose was still not doable. So after 3 months, I changed again. So I wasted 9 months. After 9 months, only I finalized the title of my thesis there, you know. So that's how it goes on. So when you review literature, we will be able to find out what is doable and what is not doable, what is very important and worthwhile to do. Number 4, definitely, we are not going to repeat the same thing what people are doing. Then you will be struggling in the final viva. So I'm saying avoid reinventing the wheel. So you're not doing the same thing what people are doing. So you have to do something totally different, okay? Because you have to contribute a new knowledge or new methodology or something new in the context. And we do literature review also to understand our research better. The other reason also, some comprehensive review of literature is essential because it does provide up-to-date understanding of the subject and significance structure. It does help us to identify what kind of research methods are being used so that it guides me what kind of research method I'm going to use. We get informed about the views and you know, research of experts in the field. Review of literature does help in formulation of research topic, questions, and direction. And definitely it provides some kind of basis for subsequent stages of research that we are going to undertake. So when do you start writing or drafting? That would be the question. I see the question that you have put when you fill in the questionnaire. This question is there. When should I start writing? This is $1 million question. When should I start writing? So different people have different views. But for me, let me follow someone who is established in the research area. Saunders. business research method book. I think many of us, we have gone through, we have read through. Okay, Saunders have recommended that when you read the first paper, you start drafting already. Okay, if you see the process here, you have your research questions and objectives, and from there you develop your parameters, you generate keywords, you conduct research, you obtain literature, you evaluate them, you record them, then you start drafting the review. So you started writing already, right? So I see many students, they will read 20, 30, 40 papers and still haven't started writing. And then after that, they will be overloaded with information and will have difficulty to start, where to start writing the literature review for the thesis. So as soon as you finish reading one paper or two papers, you should already start writing. And you continue the cycle. As you see here, the first cycle that I have said, you start drafting review, then you continue, redefine the parameters, generate keywords, and then you conduct search, obtain literature, evaluate and record. And you continue, update and revise the draft, and it continues. So this process continues over some time, and you will stop somewhere. I will tell you where to stop. So the question of when to start writing or drafting. So basically the answer is you should be starting once you read first paper, you should start drafting already. You should start writing already. It doesn't matter what you write, just some sketch on a paper, okay? That's why you have to start. You are going to start from zero. So just some sketch from reading of a paper would be even good. You start from the beginning, okay? So this is how you are, right? At the beginning, when you start looking for information, you obtain a lot of papers and all that, you will be worried and be thinking, how should I do, This is very common. Now, in terms of searching strategy, you define research parameters, generate keywords. Earlier, Saunders has shown that way, right? Saunders' way, if you look at basically what he has done, parameters, then conduct search, obtain literature, evaluate and record it the same. I put it in a way, but again, I have added the two extra one, brainstorm your ideas. That's why I put it this one. You have to start thinking, you got to be inquisitive, and then you have brainstorm your ideas, and then do some kind of mind mapping. I'm going to show you a template that I have developed that helps you to do some kind of mind mapping for a systematic literature review. I'm going to show you that. So other key purpose of literature review also to further refine research question and objectives, discover recommendation for further research, avoid repeating words, right? Insight into strategies and techniques used for research. This is from Gall et al. Now, the key to a critical literature review is basically number one, you have to demonstrate what you have read, understood, and evaluated during your reading. You have to link different ideas to form a cohesive and coherent argument. And you have to make clear connection to your research objectives and subsequent research materials. When we read the student's draft, especially PhD as a supervisor or examiner, definitely the weakness of majority students write up is the missing link between the ideas. The ideas should be flowing. Ideas should be flowing. Every paragraph should be connected, because remember, your thesis is basically one piece of work. So you start from the beginning up to the end, it's just one research problem. So all ideas got to be interconnected, interrelated. Okay, it has to be coherent and cohesive when you argue. So that is missing in most of students' thesis. Also, students tend to forget what kind of research objective and research question they have. So when you have research question and objective in mind and you start reading papers, you see so many information, so many different information, different theories, different findings and all that, and you get carried away with that, and you tend to forget what kind of research problem and questions you have. So the literature review, to be critical, you have to remember the scope of your research. Research question and objectives you have to keep in mind. You cannot go away from those research questions that you have formulated in your research, because those research questions are basically reflection of research problem that you have identified and defined. This is from Saunders et al. Again, the key to a literature review. This slide is the most important slide, one of the most important slides of my talk. I do explain a lot on this. When you get a paper, getting paper is not difficult nowadays, right? It's all online. Just a click, you get many papers there. And then you have to have that skill to identify which paper is relevant and useful for me, and which paper is good or not good, right? That is skill you have to have. Doesn't matter where the paper come from. While you start reading the paper, you will need you would understand the quality of the paper. So first stage, we have to review the paper, preview with the paper. Basically, you will just see whether the paper is related to me or not. And then if you find that the paper is relevant to me or related to me, then you will continue reading. You will start reading from the beginning. So when you start reading, you will underline and you will highlight the important parts that you are going to take from this paper. Remember that a research paper could be for science and engineering could be even 4, 5 pages, 10 pages long, but social science, it could be up to 50 pages, 40 pages long. So you are not going to take everything from a paper, it's just few sentences or few lines, right? So you got to underline and highlight in the second reading. And then once you finish underlining and highlighting, then after that you will summarize the paper. Take all the important parts and put it in a paragraph from a paper. This is summarizing. And once you read more than one paper, you will start comparing and contrasting. This is what is recommended by Harvard College Library. But I explain this slide in different way. I would recommend that a paper should be read for 4 times. Any research paper you get, first reading would be reading for the sake of reading, to see whether it is useful, it's relevant, it's important for me. Second reading would be basically understanding, where you will underline and highlight. The third reading would be for summarizing, and the fourth reading, when you read more than one paper, you will compare and contrast. So this is what I strongly advocate and suggest for a student to do. A paper should be read for 4 times. Again, at the end of this session, I'm going to give you a template which is developed by me, which will help you to do this, okay? Now, this is some description of it I have given for you. This slide will be shared with Ms. Sonia, and she will share with you all. So what does it mean by preview? I said you are reading for the sake of reading. This is annotating. Basically, you are just putting underline and all that. So you are having a close reading of the paper. And then summarizing, basically, you are just summing the main points that you would like to take it in your research. So it is also there. And then you are comparing and contrasting when you have more than one. So basically, you are going to clarify and highlight the subtle differences and similarities between and or among the papers that you are reading. Now, this is what is the kind of situation you will develop after you read many papers, okay? Now, adopting a critical perspective, you need to have 2 very important skills. Number 1, you must have the capacity to evaluate what you read. If you do not know how to evaluate a paper, then it defeats the purpose of reading the paper. So you should be able to evaluate the paper, whether it's a good paper or not, whether the paper is relevant and useful to my research or not, whether the research have followed some systematic approach in doing the research or not, the methodology was robust or not, appropriate or not. All that we have to have the capacity to evaluate. And number 2, we have to have the capacity to relate. So sometimes we read a paper and many students will come and tell me, sir, I do not know what to take from this paper. So meaning that you do not have the capacity to relate what you have read. So the first capacity is to evaluate the paper that you read. And number 2, you must know which part of the paper you want to take it in your research. This is very important. This is also many of you, I'm sure academics join me now. For academics also, many new academic would be having the same problem. Like when they go and teach in a class, a chapter, they want to teach everything from a chapter. But when you read, when you write a book, you know, I did write few books, but when you write books, we don't write only the things are relevant, because you have to increase the volume. So we will add on some rubbish, you know, in the chapter. So we have to know exactly what is important of a chapter. Then that's the part we got to teach among the students. The same thing goes on the research papers. Not everything is important to me. Some parts are important to me, some parts could be important to others. So we must know which is important, and then we just relate that and take it for our research. So this is also suggested by Wallace and Ray, 2006. Now, what should be in the critical review, the content? We must have key academic theories. We should demonstrate the current knowledge of the area. we should have clear referencing to the reader so that they can find the original cited publication. And we have to definitely acknowledge the research of others. So that makes your content critical. Very important. Huh? Remember, you must have theories. Students doing a PhD or master by research, many students will come and tell me, I cannot find any theories related to my research. I say, that is impossible. There are so many theories. So you have to see how can you connect those theories to you. But please keep in mind, when you are choosing a theory to underpin your research, to support your research, then you got to look at the assumptions of that theory. So your research problem, you have certain kind of assumptions there. So there must be some kind of tallying between the theories that you choose and the kind of assumption that you have. Okay, some theories are organization level theory and some are individual level theory. If your research is on individual level and you choose organization level theories, then you may run into trouble during the final viva voce. Okay, and vice versa. So it's very important. You must have some theories that explain the phenomena, the problem in hand in your research. And then most of the time, the thesis that you read or research paper that you read, the majority authors will have problem of demonstrating the current knowledge in the area. So we recommend that 40% of your citation should be from latest 5 years. Because things are changing too fast, okay? Millions of people are undertaking research worldwide, and thousands of papers are being published almost every day. So the current area of knowledge, the ideas, the concepts, the constructs, the theories are changing. So you have to read latest papers. So when you are putting citation, there is a criteria for PhD or masters by research. You need to have 40% minimum, 40% of your citation from latest 5 years. It's very important. And then you have to have clear referencing. You cannot take people thing and put it like it is yours. You can't do that. Even though you rephrase it, you rewrite the sentence, all that, still you have to give the credit to the original author. It's very important. And I always say this, you know, by acknowledging others, you don't lose anything. When you respect somebody, actually you are respecting yourself. By respecting others, you don't lose anything, okay? So citing and referencing others, actually you are citing, respecting others, and that way people will respect you. It is reciprocal, okay? So this is very important, giving acknowledgement to others who have done research before and you are citing them. This is more comprehensive. This is suggested by Saunders again. The contents of a critical literature review. You should have elements of strength and weaknesses of theories in the discussion. You must show or demonstrate clear understanding of the topic. You are citing all key studies, This is very common when you go for viva voce session as examiner. We will identify certain key studies that are not being cited and tell the students why you didn't cite this one. It's very common, huh? And you will see, especially those are very senior one, they will print out that those papers bring with them, and during the viva session they will pass it to you. Why didn't you cite this paper, which is a key paper in that area? It's very common among the older generation. So you got to be very careful and mindful. All key studies should be included in your literature review. That makes it critical. Huh? A clear indication of how the review links to your research. So this is another one. Students are very weak. They will just summarize people's work and they will just present it. And they fail to link them with your research question. This is very important. So you have to have your own inference, some kind of discussion from your own while you are taking ideas from people. So you have to have inference there, which are very, usually students are very weak in that. Then in the literature review itself, you have to have clear boundaries because you have your specific research questions. You cannot go out of it. So literature review should be confined into answering those research questions, okay? You have a selection and synthesis of existing arguments. That's what earlier I said, your presentation should be coherent and cohesive, right? There should be a clear linkage between paragraph to paragraph, and ideas should be flowing to one to another. And through gradual refinement, a clear demarcation of the research problem would be done. So at the end of literature review, we expect a summary that provides this basically the research gap, okay? Sometimes we expect you to provide a summary table of literature and show where the gap is. All right, that makes it a literature review critical. As I said earlier at the beginning, I said basically I'm going to cover three parts of it in my talk today. One is literature review, one is critical literature review, other one is systematic literature review. Okay, so I have covered basically the literature review, and I'm now on the critical literature review. But again, you have to bear in mind, once you complete the critical literature review, basically you have completed almost 80% systematic literature review. Okay, these are very interrelated and alternative terms that we use. So how do you organize your literature review? That is, many of you ask me that question. When you fill in the form, you have put that. So you should start with dependent variable. Remember, that is the central theme of your research. Your research problem is from dependent variable. Remember, if you are doing a study, say for example, factor affecting job satisfaction. So your study is about job satisfaction, right? The factors could be compensation package, could be a leadership style, could be employee-employee relationship. Those are symptoms. Those are factors. Those are not your central theme. You know, central theme is job satisfaction. You are trying to find out what satisfied people and dissatisfied people. Okay, so the dependent variable is your research problem, and you should start with that in your literature review, and followed by the symptoms, the factors, the independent variables, followed by, in case if you are mediating or moderating variable, followed by if you have a control variable, right? That's how it should proceed. So you start with dependent variable, you start slow. Later, I will show you again a model, how should you start discussion on dependent variable. I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you some example. So you start with dependent variable, followed by independent variables, then mediating, moderating variables, and control variable, and then you should have an excellent summary as the conclusion, whereby you will highlight the research gaps. But while we write all these, I put on the left, you can see in the red, I put it, I said basically you have to ensure good flow and logical sequence is your presentation. Ideas should be flowing. Ideas should be flowing with clear linkages between them. And the ideas that flows, there must be some logical sequence. You know, there cannot be overlapping. So ideas from one to another, there should be logical. Reasoning should be there. Why I put this one first, then the second one, and it goes on. So it should be flowing from one to another with clear linkages, and the sequence should be very logical, rational, acceptable. Okay. Now, this is a model proposed, so we call it hourglass model. Hourglass model. This model is more applicable when you write a paper, but even in systematic or critical literature review, this model also very important. We call it hourglass model. So when you start literature review, you would be talking in general more, and followed by you look at what method or results people find, but you should be focusing more on discussion and conclusion. You know, that's the part missing in most of the student case. What we do, we talk about results of previous researches. We talk about them a lot. We talk about how they did it and all that. So this is very common, as I see. I read PhD students draft, you know, in every week. So students focus on methods and results. They have less discussion by themselves, and I am insisting there. You have to have your own inference, your own conclusion. All right, that makes it critical. That makes it systematic, because this is your work. You're supposed to say more than what people have said. So you have to cite people, but you have to have your own inference, and you have to talk more. Okay, this model is very good, especially when you are writing a paper. As I see in Ms. Sonia's from and the feedback from you, some of you wanted me to explain how can I write literature review for papers. And most of you are talking about PhD, so I was a bit, you know, struggling to fine-tune my discussion so that both of you can be benefited from the talk, writing a paper and writing your PhD thesis draft or master research draft. But this model can be useful for both. Literature review, you have to have overview first, and then you talk about citation from people and all the findings, but you have to have your own inference a lot, discussion a lot, and a conclusion from those findings of previous researches. Now, you've got to make your choice clear, right? Your voice clear. You are not just presenting your views, argument. You're not just presenting it. Your perspective, your position, your standpoint is very important. Very important. You have to identify theories that underpin your research, or concept, or the model, or equation, you know, and you have to show they are strongly related to your research. Very important. In Malaysia, definitely one part of thesis is quite weak always. That is ontology and epistemology. We seldom talk about it, but when I read thesis from Australia, especially Macquarie University, Australia, as an external examiner, I loved reading their research because they have a lot of emphasis on ontology and epistemology. Possibly, if everything goes well, if you are interested, possibly we can have a webinar on it, ontology, epistemology, to really understand, because PhD is basically Doctor of Philosophy. There should be some kind of philosophical foundation, which tends to be missing in most of our theses. We have theoretical foundation, but not philosophical foundation. But unfortunately, the degree is on philosophy, Doctor of Philosophy, not Doctor of Theory. So there should be some kind of philosophical foundation and guidance, but it is missing in most of our research. I would like you to keep that in mind, okay? This is an example of a weak literature review. If you read, you would know how badly this literature review is written. This is taken from an original thesis, okay? As I'm going to give you the slide, I'm not going to read and spend time here. This is an acceptable literature review. Look at it. Itself, you know how good, you know how well written this piece of work. Numerous studies found job stress influencing employee satisfaction over performance, because most of the organizations now are more demanding of the better job outcomes. In fact, modern times have been called an age of anxiety. So you can see the clear flow and linkages are there from one sentence to another sentence. That's what we want. And from the first paragraph to next paragraph, you will see the connection is there. You know, other than that, this one you can see the link is missing. The flow is not there. Ideas are not flowing, and the sequence of presentation is not very good. It's not logical. Rationalization, the idea is not flowing as we want, and the sequence is not really very acceptable. This is acceptable literature review, and that shows you are critical in this. Here you can see the student has cited two, but he has more of own what is said. Okay, and this is another one, acceptable one. You can see here he's talking about it, and then after that you are connecting it to a person citing it. But again, the whole page you can see the citation is only one. So two citation, right? So basically he's talking more on himself, describing his understanding, articulating the ideas he get beautifully articulated and presented. So this is another acceptable literature review that we see. Now this question have been asked by many of you, how many papers should I cite? Okay, for me, to me, if you want to have a good grasp or control over the area of research, you should be reading at least 40 key papers in the research area. 40, I recommend 40. At least 40 key papers, not every kind of paper, 40 key papers. And among the 40% should be the latest papers, okay? For PhD research, it is expected that you have read about 200 papers, and for master by research, about 100. And among them, you should have 40% papers from the latest 5 years. So in PhD, if you have 200 papers, then 80 papers. If 40%, then 80 papers should be latest 5 years papers. Many examiners are very particular on it. They will count actually what percentage of a paper are latest papers, and you will get into trouble. You might be given a major correction just because your literature review is not latest, meaning that you don't have 40% latest papers covered in your research, okay? Now, I want you also to be mindful that when you read 200 papers, it's impossible for you to remember all 200 papers, okay? So I usually recommend students that you should be reading 40 key papers, and those 40 key papers should be on your lips. You should know everything ins and out of the paper, 40 papers. Then you should be all right. during your proposal defense or your final defense. So the key papers are important, that you got to really keep that in your mind. Okay, it has to be in your mind. Any people ask you anything, you cite one of them or two of them and answer the question. So 40 key papers, very important papers. So that's how we will be, you know, once you read and you feel like down and frustrated, we want to give up, that kind of situation is always there. Very common, so don't be worried. If you are not in that kind of situation, actually you are not in a PhD. Remember I said PhD doing research is a kind of journey. So while you are driving, you get into a traffic jam and you will be just catching your head and thinking, how am I going to reach the place on time, you know? Then once you go a bit and you see an accident and see many people are injured and all that, that frustrates you, you know, makes you worried. It's common because research is a journey. So this is very common. So you should not be worried about it. Now, as I was saying that in any PhD research, basically you need to have a philosophical foundation and theoretical foundation. For master research, we may not want you to have a philosophical foundation, but theoretical foundation should be there. So a theory starts with idea. From an idea, we develop concept. From there, we continue to construct, and then we will have our hypothesis, proposition, and finally, if it is proved, it becomes a theory. This is basically another topic. When you talk of theoretical framework, conceptual framework, I discuss more on it. I would suggest you to visit my YouTube channel. All videos are about research methodology and research methods. So I have more discussion on this. You should be understanding more there. If I spend more time here, unfortunately, I'll not be able to cover other areas. Okay. So I just want to show you the flow. It starts with ideas. Ideas are basically something that just comes in mind. Then when you purify it, we make it useful, it becomes concept. And then when concept is developed, we can visualize it. Then we want to measure it. When we want to measure it, it becomes construct. So it's like variable in the research, the factors that we identified. In the model, we have many factors. In equation also, we have factors. Those are construct. And from there, we assume some relationship between construct that become your proposition or hypothesis. And once those propositions are proved, it becomes a theory. Okay. Now, in a critical literature review also, there are two different approaches which got to be understood. One, we call it deductive. Other one, we call it inductive. Deductive approach, basically, it is developed, your research is developed using theoretical conceptual framework from literature, and then with this, with the data. So you use the existing theory. We use existing theory, existing concepts, and then we develop a theoretical framework or conceptual framework or research model or equations to solve based on what we have from existing. And then we use the data and finally we test hypothesis and we make a conclusion. That's how we call it deductive, because we are taking from existing one. Whereby inductive is different. We don't have any formula, any concept. We may have concepts, but we don't have a formula, a theory. So you are collecting data, you're playing with the data, you're analyzing data, and then finally you are coming out with a theory or concept. That is inductive research, okay? So to put it in another way, basically inductive research whereby you have facts and observation, from there you come out with the laws and theories. And from the laws and theories, you follow deductive, you explain and predict, okay? So that's the flow, basically, in inductive and deductive process. You collect the facts and figures and information, observation, you come out with the laws and theories, policies, that is inductive research. And from existing theories, policies, and laws that we have, we have some assumption and collect data, we test them, we explain them. That become your deductive research. So this is how deductive works. You have a theory, from theory you develop hypothesis, then you collect data, and then we accept, reject hypothesis. That is deductive approach. So I put an analogy here. Deductive approach is like you have a very beautiful garden, you go inside the garden and pick up the flowers that you like or you need, you know. So this is like flowers are the theories, flowers are the theories, the construct of theories. So you pick up flowers, so those flowers become your independent variable or mediating variable or moderating variable, the environment that you see. This is deductive. You have existing, from there you're picking up the right one, the relevant one for you that is needed for you. Okay, that's a deductive approach. Inductive approach, whereby you are observing the phenomena, you are collecting the raw facts and figures, then you analyze the pattern, you formulate relationship, then you develop a theory. And here I have this analogy. Basically, you are landed on a piece of land, okay, and then from there you plow the land, okay. Then from there you continuing that, preparing the ground for planting the trees, and there you plant the tree, okay. So then you have the tree there, you water the tree grows, and then finally, you know, you are going to have this. This is inductive. I hope you are following me correctly. So this is inductive. We're starting with that. So in inductive, you are collecting data, then you started playing with the data, and finally you're coming out with a concept, you are testing, coming out and with the concept and theories. That's inductive, okay? And by deductive is different. This is what you have from existing theories and all that. You pick up what you want, and then you test whether they are related or not, whether that solves your problem or not. Okay, I'm very sure, you know, I'm not sure in definitely in our areas like in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, my region, for the bridegrooms, the first night the bed has to be you know, decorated by different kind of flowers. So it looks like which flowers would be more beautiful and more smelling, you know, giving good scent and smell, gives you good color and all that. So you pick up those flowers. So this is deductive. But you want to go inductive, so you are harvesting and finally you are creating your own flowers that you like and you want to have them. Okay, so that is inductive. I hope it is very clear. Now, phases in a systematic literature review, there are basically 3 phases in a systematic. I have already covered, literature review and critical literature review. Now I'm moving more on systematic literature review now, very specific to the topic. So first phase, we specify research question, we develop research review protocol, we validate review protocol, and then second phase, we conduct the research review. We identify relevant research, we select primary studies, we assess the quality of the papers, we extract the data, we synthesize the data, and finally we start writing the draft. Okay, this is systematic literature review phases. And if you look at the stages, there are 3 stages basically. You call it the number 1, we call it planning the review, whereby you identify the need for a review, your preparation of proposal for review, we develop some protocol. Stage 2, you'll conduct a review, identification of research, we select the right kind of paper, relevant papers, we assess the quality of the paper, then we extract the data and monitor progress. We do synthesize the data that we have collected from reading those papers. And finally, we develop a comprehensive summary, which is very important, right? Earlier, I was saying that at the end of literature review chapter, we expect some kind of excellent summary by highlighting what has been done and what is not done, and the research gap. And you can definitely summarize, put it in a tabulation, a table format to show what the key studies are, what they have done or what they have not done, and the weaknesses of those theses. That makes it a systematic literature review very perfect. Now, this one I always show in most of my talks. This is the kind of situation we are in now. So getting papers and all that are very easy. Even you are having coffee in a McDonald's or in a cafe somewhere, you can still do literature review, right? You can find papers, you can read. It's very easy. Social media, even if you go to PhD support group, and many groups are there where papers are being uploaded. You go to ResearchGate, easy to get millions of papers there. Google Scholar, you have millions of papers there. So it's not easy. So this latest media, all that help us identifying that. But this one, what you have to keep in mind, one, you are choosing your research area. Please be mindful. There's a certain areas of that we work will not be available in the future because of 4th industrial revolution. Things are changing too much, right? And especially now with the COVID, you can see the health-related field becoming very popular, the robotic automation becoming very popular, the creative discipline getting popular, We are not looking for somebody having just one area specialization. Rather, we are looking for multi-intelligence. In the COVID-19, we have seen that a person who can do multiple tasks are most wanted kind of thing, you know. So these are the few things I'm not going to read, but I want to remind you, when you are choosing a topic of research, make sure you choose an area which is not going to be obsolete sooner in years to come. Rather, you should choose an area which is going to be promising in coming years. All right, this is something that I have developed to make your life easier. This is a template that I have developed for a systematic literature review and being appreciated by many from different parts of the world. As I was saying at the beginning, this is my 6th webinar on systematic literature review. I have done 5 before, and looks like participants somehow like this template that I have created for you. So when you get a good paper, then you want to summarize. You have read. Remember how many times to read? I said you should read for 4 times, right? So first time reading, you just preview, reading for the sake of reading. Second one would be annotating. You underline and highlight the areas that you would like to take. And third would be summarizing. This is the template which will help you to summarize. So the first block that I have put, when you read a paper, please identify to see what kind of research problem they handle, focusing their research. Put that in 1 or 2 sentences. The second block, you are trying to identify what are the variables or the factors they studied. And then you are to identify the theories they use at the third block, or the concept they use, and the hypothesis they have tested. Then fourth block, basically you are looking at how did they collect the data, where did they collect the data. It could be primary, it could be secondary. Even if it is primary, then there are many different approaches are there, which approach is being used. For certain research, definitely survey method is appropriate. Certain research could be focus group interview more appropriate. For certain kind of research, will be content analysis would be more appropriate, and there are many research where secondary data will be most appropriate. So that's why we got to also take note of what kind of data sources and method they use. And then when from the reading of your paper, you got to look at the kind of analysis they use. Remember, robustness of analysis is one of the criteria to get your paper accepted in a good journal. It's also important for your degree to be, acceptable, PhD or master's. So what kind of, there's so many softwares available now in science, medical, engineering, and business everywhere. We have AMOS, you have PLS, you have SPSS, you have SAS, you have Minitab, you have C++, and there's so many softwares available. So you have to look at the kind of apps applied in analyzing the data. And then we have to summarize the paper that you have read. These paper findings, earlier number 2, you have summarized the findings of previous research, and here you are summarizing the current paper that you are reading. And the most important, the last part, is the suggestion for future research. So when you conduct research, at the end, this is something like a scapegoat. You will tell people that the limitation of my research is this. So the future researchers should be doing this kind of thing in their research, okay? So that one will do. So suggestion for future research is basically which the researcher couldn't do and left it for us to do, meaning the research gap is already there, which is very important. So this paper is basically, if you read a paper, basically it could be 4 pages up to 40 pages long, and then you can summarize into 1 page only. This is how it is done. Let me show you some example. This is a paper which is 16 pages long paper, and is summarized in 1 page. I don't need more than this. You don't need more than this, okay? So when you're going to write your literature review, that's what you need. And that's what you have to remember when you are going to defend your thesis in proposal or final viva voce. So that's what you have to basically remember, okay? So let me show you one more. This is another paper which is 25 pages long, and this is summarized into 1 page. So this is using the same template. So you have identified the research problem, you identified what are the variables or factors they use, you identified the theory, You are looking at the data sources and all that we have identified. So this is another example. A paper is being summarized into one page. So as continuous, you can see another paper. This is just 8 pages long, but summarized into one single page. So I have summarized about 10 papers just to show you an example how we summarize research papers. One longer paper is summarized into one page only. Now, what I advocate or suggest students to do, once you read a paper, then you summarize into one single page. And that's what you have 3 readings, right? First reading was previewing, second reading was annotating, third reading was summarizing. So this is your summary. So after that, once you finish 10 papers, I will ask you to read one more time, and finally you do this one. You are going to have, this is basically summary of 10 papers in one page. So I'm recommending that once you have read 10 papers and summarize into 10 single papers, then you combine the 10 papers into one page only. Here, because of shortage of space, the research problem is not written there. And the findings of previous research, you put it as author, but by right, it should be following the same template that we have. So if you can summarize the 10 papers into one, then you would be able to compare and contrast. So that's what I do with many of my students when I supervise. I want you to summarize into one single page, one paper. Then when you finish reading 10 papers, then you have to summarize this 10 paper into one single page. See, it will be beautiful to see, that 10 papers you have summarized into one single page. And then I will debate with the student. I will argue with the student. I'll ask the student to present after finishing 10 papers, reading of 10 papers. After finishing reading 10 papers, I will ask you to go for second round, okay? So you read another 10 papers, then you summarize into one single page. Then I will ask you to go for the third round. So you finish reading another 10 papers, then you summarize into one single page. And you go for fourth round. Remember, earlier I have recommended that you should read at least 40 key papers in the area. That's enough for you to get a hold of the area of research. So when you have read 40 research papers, remember how many summary pages you have now. 10 research paper, you summarize into one single page. Second 10 papers, you have summarized one single page. So 40 papers, you have basically 4 single pages. And from there, I want you to summarize into one single page. So 10 paper summary will come into 40 pages summary into one single page. That's the most beautiful thing you can see in your life. 40 papers summarized into one single page. That gives you everything. That's what we call mind mapping, right? That's what I was saying earlier. You will develop some kind of the tree or mapping whereby you will see 40 papers being flowing from one to another. Ideas are flowing, right? So this template would be given to you. Ms. Sonia will definitely share with you. Template is there, and some example of summary is also there. So if you do a good job of all this, so that's basically what you will be. You'll be feeling like I'm done. You'll be happy. So that's how a systematic literature review will do. When you are critical and systematic in reviewing literature, at the end, you should be like that. Okay. So with that, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much for hearing, and I will pass the session to Ms. Sonia for question and answers.